Okay, hi everybody. So it's my great pleasure to have you at this ABM4Policy seminar with Emanuele Russo. So he is a postdoc at the Institute of Economics and EMbeDS, which is like a center of excellence for big data and artificial intelligence, both at the Sant'Anna School of Advanced Studies in Pisa. So thanks very much. Just to say, we have about 1 hour for the presentation and questions and answers. Unless you have a really urgent question, please ask them at the end. I'll moderate the questions at the end, so you can either raise your hand virtually or put the questions, your questions into the chat box, and we'll pick it up from there. Okay. Yeah. Thanks very much. And Emanuele, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to present this piece of work here at the ABM4Policy seminar. This is part of a project that we have here in Pisa at the Sant'Anna School of Advanced Studies, that we are conducting together with Giovanni, Dosi, Elisa, Palagi, and Andrea, Roventini. What we are trying to do. So this project is this piece of research is part of our Growing Pro project, which is an Horizon project that we are conducting also here in Pisa jointly with several other partners. This work, as you can see from the title, is related to the role of intellectual property rights and innovation using an industry model, an industry agent-based model. Okay, I'm gonna go into the detail, but let me start firstly by providing some motivation. On the one hand, there is an open debate on the role of IPRs and on the role of the patent system in fostering innovation. And there is, let me say, an increasing discontent among innovation scholars related to how the patent system, the functioning of the patent system in this respect, because there is an increasing recognition of the high social cost and of the dysfunctionality that are implicit in the patent system. Yet, this debate is particularly vibrant in the pharmaceutical sector. Why? Because basically let's say the discovery and development of drugs, of new drugs, is often seen as an area where the scope for using patent protection is particularly high. Why? Well, because there are some industry-specific characteristics that related to the process of technological change in the industry. In particular, there are higher R&D costs. So pharmaceutical firms have to go through a long process and spend a lot of money in R&D. This is the standard argument in favor of patent protection. That is why in this industry, patents are seen favorably. So firms have to go through this long and costly process before having their product, let's say, approved by regulatory authorities. And this creates a lot of uncertainty. On the other hand, imitation is relatively easy in this industry, which means that first mover cannot really appropriate the benefit of innovation, lacking the patent system. Yet there are increasing concerns about let's say, the social cost and the welfare implication of the patent system in this area, because I mean, this industry is about healthcare, and healthcare is increasingly recognized as a universal right. So there are concerns that monopolistic power in this area may create problem. And also there are concerns about the directionality of technical change. So like that the patent system may affect the directionality and incentivize firms to invest in specific areas rather than others that may be more beneficial. ABMs in this respect can provide complementary evidence to empirical and historical studies that are there are several empirical studies and historical studies. Let's say there are several historical and case studies. There are less empirical studies, and yet the evidence is not univocal. So I think ABMs can provide complementary evidence in this respect. What we ask is basically two main questions. First of all, how the design of the patent system, particularly the strength of the patent system in terms of breadth and length, duration, therefore, how these affect innovation. And we are also asking what are the implications in terms of market competition and consumer welfare. Okay. So let me just describe the model in a nutshell. What we did is developing a new ABM in the tradition of evolutionary kind of modeling, which is tailored on the drug industry. We have firms that compete in different submarkets that are therapeutic categories that you can interpret as therapeutic categories, invest in R&D and sell their products. Those firms are allowed to conduct three types of innovation. The first one is local, so they can improve the quality of their product within a submarket where they are already operating. The second one is they can branch into existing submarkets, like diversifying their product portfolio. And the last one is the discovery of a new submarkets, that is like finding drugs for unmet therapeutic needs, like unexplored therapeutic area, something like that. You can think like this. The model features a patent system. So the patent system has two main components. The first one is like it grants the protection and the rights to exclude other competitors from specific areas of the product space that are protected by patents. On the other hand, it has a positive feedback, since it allows disclosure of knowledge. So as you know, in reality, firms, when they file a patent, they are forced to disclose at least the part of knowledge that is codified about their invention. And we embed this feature in the model. So you have disclosure effect, like it's easy to imitate products that have expired patents, okay? What we find, I'm gonna spoil a little bit our results. What we find, or basically what we do is, like, first, we are able to find a baseline scenario which is in line on the one hand with several stylized facts of the industry, on the other with some key observational variables that you observe. Then, starting from this baseline scenario, what we do is performing some counterfactual policy experiment, when we basically implement a more or less stringent patent system in terms of both the scope, so the area of the scope of the area protected by the system, and also the length, that is the duration of the patent system. And we study under these two configurations, under these two characteristics of the patent systems, what are the implications, as I was saying, for innovation and welfare and competition. So the model is basically an artificial industry populated by end firms. Those firms explore different parallel two-dimensional product lattices. That is, they move in, they are spatially located in product spaces. Each product space, that is, is one submarket. As I was saying, the submarkets here are indicate some therapeutic categories. So they are competing in different submarkets, which are modeled as just two-dimensional spaces. Okay. Therefore, a product in a given submarket is simply characterized by the X and Y coordinates, okay? So its location in the product space. Firms compete by discovery and development of new products, and then there is a process of market selection that determines their demand and profits. Just to describe one time step, firms start by at the beginning of the step they set their R&D expenditures. After setting their R&D expenditures, then there is the process of innovation that takes place, and I will go into the detail of this. Then after innovation, we check whether new products are or not in violation of the patent system. If not, the firm is allowed to patent. Otherwise, the firm has to stick to its old product, okay? After knowing their products, so after discovery of new products, they set new prices, eventually update old prices, and then sell the products via a process of market selection. At the end of the time step, there is a process of entry and exit that take place. So let me start with R&D investment. We model R&D in a very simple way. Then I will show you that we also perform a robustness check in this respect. What we assume is that firm invest a constant share of past sales in R&D. This is very much in line not only with the empirical evidence, but also with the tradition of evolutionary models which inspire this work. So they invest this fraction of past sales in R&D, and then they simply split the R&D into three types of innovation that, as I was saying before, that I just described before. So, and I will tell you even more in the next slide. So R&D is split among these three types of innovation. The innovation is modeled again in line with the tradition, with the evolutionary tradition as a two-step stochastic process. In the first step, for each type of innovation, you have a Bernoulli draw which determines whether you are successful or not in innovating. So, and you can think about this as accounting for all the uncertainty that characterize the innovation in the pharmaceutical industry. So starting from preclinical to clinical phases, okay? So any kind of innovation failures that may occur along all the long process of development that you have in this industry. And of course, the probability of success for each type of innovation is proportional, is positively affected by R&D, and the R&D that is spent for that specific kind of innovation. And we have those theta parameters that are that account instead for all the let's say characteristics of the innovation system, which includes most importantly, of course, the role of public research and basic science. So these parameters kind of black boxing all the features that are outside the firm and affect the probability of being successful in innovation. Also, we account for an upper bound on the probability that is, even if you are a very big firm, you always have a minimum degree of uncertainty in the discovery of new products. Then the second stage, we have three different second stages, one for each type of innovation. So if you are successful in innovating within submarket that is improving the quality of one of your existing product, what you do is just randomly pick one of your product. Then you define in that submarket the set of existing goods with overall higher quality. So you want to imitate eventually goods that are better, that have higher quality than yours. and then a search area that is in the neighborhood of your currently produced product. Okay, this is to account for the fact that innovation is local. Then once you have those two sets, you will draw one product from those two sets. So intuitively, what you can do once you innovate within submarket, you can either imitate one of the product of your competitors, or you can just improve your product in a neighbor of your current location. Okay. We model this with a transition probability matrix, where the probability is affected negatively by the distance. That is, it's very hard to make. It's more difficult to make long jumps in the product space. So you are more likely to stay close to your current product. And then there is instead a positive effect related to expired patent. So products that have an expired patent are more likely to be imitated. Okay, this to account, as I was saying at the beginning, for a knowledge disclosure effect. Let me say no, let's just say that this is to account for. No, let me say that we normalize the probability. So this probability, after we compute this value, then is normalized in order to stay between 0 and 1. Instead, if you are successful in the second type of innovation, that is branching into existing submarket, you will simply diversify your portfolio. So you will jump into a submarket that already exists where you are not currently operating. So, and what you do here is very simple. You pick one of the submarkets when you are not operating yet, and the probability is positively affected by the number of products that are in that submarket that have an expired patent associated. So it's more easy to jump into submarkets where there are several products with expired patents. Okay, again for a reason of knowledge disclosure. And finally, if you discover a new submarket, you will just open up a new space. That is, you will open up a new submarket that you can think about, as I was saying, discovering a new drug for unmet therapeutic needs. You will simply draw randomly your initial position within that is within one and some exogenous parameters. So we fix the initial dimension of each submarket. And of course, if you do this, you have a sort of first mover advantage, meaning that you are the first one to stay in that market, and you get the full market share. You are the leader, and then in subsequent periods, eventually second movers may be allowed to join the new submarket via branching. That is the process, the type of innovation that I described before. The patent system, as I was saying, has two important dimensions. The first one is that when you own a patent on a given product, you have the right to exclude competitors from an area of the product space that is around this product. The dimension of this area is regulated by this parameter path BR, that is the path breadth parameter, okay, that regulates the scope of the patent system. Instead, the duration is affected by the parameter of patent length, which in our baseline simulation is set to 20 periods. That is in line with the observation. And then again, the last dimension of the patent system, other from the exclusion of competitors, is to favor disclosure. That is, as I just explained, the fact that imitating products with expired patent is relatively easier in the model. Once firms have innovated and eventually patented their products, they can set their prices, which are set according to a simple markup rule. So just adding a markup over unit cost. In particular, we have exogenous and normalized unit production cost and unit R&D, which instead is endogenous. And the markup is then updated as a result of shocks in your sales. So when you have a positive shock sufficiently enough in your sales, you will add a positive shock to your markup, and vice versa. So the adjustment is discontinuous, meaning that there is that adjustment occurs only in response to sufficiently large or sufficiently small shocks to your sales. Demand in each market evolves according to a logistic function. So over time, since the discovery of the submarket, the demand saturates and converges to the Dmax, which is an exogenously set level of demand. In this capture the standard pattern of demand that tends to follow a logistic, and you have a parameter that regulates the speed at which demand saturates, so you can play with that. Demand is then allocated, so this is total demand in each submarket. Then demand is allocated in each submarket to individual firms via a process of quasi-replicator dynamics. I don't know whether you are familiar with this, but the replicator dynamics simply tells us that you have a fitness, which tells us about your competitiveness. And then if you are above the average of the industry or of the submarket in this specific case, you will increase your market share. Otherwise, you will decrease your market share. Okay, and the parameter mu regulates the strength of this process and therefore of market competition. The fitness here is intended as a weighted average of quality, that is the sum of your coordinates, and the inverse of price. So you have a parameter Z that regulates the relative weight of quality and prices in affecting competitiveness. In line with the data, we set this parameter in a way that price competitiveness is not so relevant, because this is something that we know about the pharmaceutical industry, and it is particularly due to the specific kind of goods that that is produced in this industry, and to the large information asymmetries that are present in pharmaceuticals. Finally, there is a process of entry and exit. We assume the firms leave a specific submarket when their market share is below a minimum threshold. So what they do is trying to abandon less profitable submarkets. When they leave the last submarket, so when they leave all submarkets, they are declared dead. So they exit completely the industry. And if a firm is dead, then it is replaced by an entrant which randomly draws its initial position and location in the product space. In this way, we are keeping the number of firms fixed in the industry. The patent system has a feedback also on the entry process, as I will show you also later in the results, because entrant, if they draw a product that is in an area protected by a patent, are not allowed to start producing. So in this case, if they violate one of the patent, they are not allowed to produce, and they will exit after just one period without producing. Okay. Let me just tell you some boring information about initial condition and model calibration, then I will get you to the results. We initialized the model with 100 identical firms just randomly located in a single submarket. So, and then over time, we let firms discover new submarkets. We simulate the model for 300 time steps and discard the first 100 observation of each simulation, just because to wash away the transient phase of the model. Then we perform 50 Monte Carlo runs in order to investigate whether results are driven by just a single run or not. And we try to set some of the parameter values, like for instance, R&D share, in line with those that we observe. This is, of course, when we observe the parameter, we try to set this in line with observable variables. And then what we do is validating the model by comparing the outcome with a set of stylized facts of the industry, and eventually with other observational variables that we did not calibrate directly. This is the standard approach that you find in several ABMs, of course. So starting with the results, as you can see here, I'm just plotting main industry variables. So at the industry level, as you can see, the industry grows over time as a result of the activities of discovery. So in particular, firms discover new submarkets, and this creates new demand opportunities, and the size of the industry keeps growing as a result of this of the discovery of new submarkets. Of course, R&D also increases over time as a result of increasing the size of the industry and the number of existing submarkets for the same submarkets and products for the same reason. Prices and profitability display some fluctuation, which are, of course, driven by some large shakeouts in market share that occurs when, for instance, there are changes in leaderships, or when a new submarket is discovered, then some firms become a new leader. So, and you see this kind of fluctuation. This is just for a single, for a baseline run. What I'm showing here is just a typical run. Then I will show also Monte Carlo results. Market shares also tell us the same story. So as you can see, there are typically two or three firms competing in a single submarket. So in the upper part, you see market share dynamics for each submarkets, and below you see the global dynamics. What is clear here is that in this baseline simulation, it emerges a core of oligopolistic leaders. That is something also very much in line with the historical experience and with what we know about the pharmaceutical industry. Just to show you how the model works, let me plot just the dynamics in one submarket. So as I told you, a submarket is just represented by bidimensional space y and with y and x coordinates. And you can see that firms are located there. The dimension of the points are the size of the firm. As you can see at the end of towards the end of the simulation, you have clearly two or three firms dominating the submarket, which are also very big. Okay, this is just to show you how over time firms tend to innovate and therefore move upward in the submarket, and by this process, laggards tend to slowly leave the market and eventually move elsewhere, or abandoning the industry completely. Again, just to show you how the model works, these are the patterns of patent protection. So in red, I'm showing the areas that are protected by patents. And as you can see over time, they tend to increase. And then when the patent expires, the area disappears and becomes again free. The red point, the green point instead represents specific products that were protected by patent at the beginning, but then the patent expired. So those are, to some extent, points that can be reached quite free by firms. Okay. Starting with the validation. So moving to the validation of the model. Maybe this is standard in several agent based, so I will go kind of quickly. We compare the outcome with some stylized fact of the industry. Here, I'm just showing the distribution of firm size and the distribution of firm growth rates. Quite in line also with other models, what we find is, and with the data that you can see on the right part of the plot, what we find is a right skewed distribution of firm size with several small firms coexisting with a group of large leaders, and fat-tailed distribution of growth shocks, Laplacian of Laplace type of distribution. Also, we are able to replicate patterns of serial autocorrelation in growth rates. This we are just estimating a pooled OLS model on firm level data on growth rates, allowing for up to 3 legs. And the parameters that we get are pretty much in line with other empirical works in the literature, particularly those Bottazzi and Secchi, 2005. Another pattern that we are able to replicate is the relation between firm size and diversification. So larger firms are more diversified and tend to compete in more submarkets. Here I'm just plotting the log of firm size versus the log number of submarkets where the firm is competing. And as you can see, there is a clear positive relation. So larger firms tend to compete in several submarkets, okay? Now let me get to some to the policy experiment. So starting with this validated scenario, let me just say also a few other things that are not in the presentation. We get the profitability. We calibrated the markup parameters in order to get a profitability that is in line with the median profitability that we find in real world data. As I said before, we also try to account for the fact that price competition is less relevant, so we calibrate the parameter in order to not to have too much price competition, and also since investments in basic science are very little for private firms in the pharmaceutical industry, we also set the parameter related to the discovery of new markets as lower than the others. So firms are investing less in more risky research. That is, again, something very plausible that we know from the experience. So going to the interesting part, policy experiments. So here we study several variables related to market competition and innovation, and we shock the model. We shock the patent breadth parameter of the model. That is, we allow for eventually larger or smaller area of protection. So the higher patent breadth, it means that the scope of the patent system is larger. I'm enlarging the scope of the patent system. The first order effect of this, you can see this in the bottom part of the plot, is that there is an increasing share of innovation blocked, not only innovation by incumbents, but also by entrants, so that the total number of products that are non-blocked by the patent system decreases over time. And this is a first order effect, okay? Then what we see as a second order effect is quite interesting, that not only product quality decreases when the scope of patents becomes larger, but also total R&D and the number of submarkets discovered. So it seems that more stringent patent systems also affect negatively the radical discoveries and the emergence of new submarkets. Then, of course, the effect on market competition. So this comes also with lower market competition, higher concentration, and higher markups. Okay, so it seems that it appears that the patent system, when it becomes more stringent, it affects negatively not only innovation, product variety and quality, but also radical innovation and overall, let's say, also competition and consumer welfare in terms of prices and markups. We find pretty similar results when we extend the duration of patents. So here we explore like 3 scenarios in which we reduce the duration from 20 to 10, or we increase it to 30. And we study these with two levels of patent breadth. That is, one, the baseline, which is 4, and a larger patent breadth that is 10. This is because we are interested in studying the policy interaction between these two parameters. As you can see, again, the story is the same, meaning that when we increase the duration of patents, we have several negative effects, not only in terms of blocked product, but also in terms of number of submarkets and market competition. Quite interestingly, in absolute levels, those results are more dramatic when you combine a long duration of patent protection with a large area of protection. That is, when you have both length and breadth of the patent system that are particularly high. This in levels, whereas we observe more dramatic falls when you have a lower patent breadth and you increase the length. That is, when you have more to lose, more at risk, because you are doing more innovation and then you increase patent length, there is a more radical decrease in several variables, innovation and competition variables. We are performing some robustness checks in order to test some potential shortcomings of our model, or things that may let's say, contradict our results. The first thing is, okay, the patent system in our model does not affect directly R&D intensity, which is fixed, it's just a share. So what we ask is quite in line maybe with the rhetoric of the pharmaceutical industry, is when we enlarge the scope of the patent system, maybe there is not only maybe there is an effect on the intensity on R&D. So firms tend to invest also more, a higher share of R&D. So what we do here is increasing both. So we increase both patent breadth, and we increase also the share of R&D that we moved from 0.1 to 0.3, see, more than double. And what we find is more or less the same results. So on the one hand, yes, there is some slightly positive effect on total R&D, quite expected, because we are increasing very much the R&D intensity of the industry. But this does not translate in a higher number of submarkets, which seems to be not significant. And overall, the total number of products available, so the variety available to consumer, decreases, as well as product quality. And again, you have adverse effect on competition and markups. The last check that we are performing is allowing for higher disclosure effects. Because one criticism may be, okay, but if you increase this disclosure effect, so if you allow for easier imitation of products with expired patents, then maybe you have more beneficial effects on innovation and competition. And this is not the case. So what we are showing here is that also by like doubling disclosure parameters, there are 2 parameters in the model that are related to disclosure effects. Also, by doubling those parameters, there are no significant effects on the variables of interest that we have. So getting to the conclusion, I just presented an evolutionary industry model that is tailored the pharmaceutical on the pharmaceutical industry. After the empirical validation of the model and a baseline scenario where we have several nice emergent properties in line with stylized facts of the industry, we investigated the response to different configuration of the patent system. What we find is that a larger extent and duration of the patent system affect negatively competition, first of all, competition, and secondly, first of all, innovation, and secondly, competition in the industry, ultimately resulting in considerable losses in terms of consumer welfare. What we will do is, first of all, we are just now refining and enlarging robustness exercises. So we want to provide even more evidence to eventually support our results. And finally, we have several possible extensions. I think that let me just mention the easiest one, that is opening the black box of public funding of basic science, and in a context where the government has more role, because now the government is simply, it appears in a very stylized way in the model. When the government has even more role, we can study alternative policy tools like subsidies, but also innovation prizes that are being proposed by several authors, and study their interaction eventually with the patent system. So thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you very much, Emanuele. That was great. So we can open it up for questions. So if you have a question, either raise your hand in the kind of virtually, or you can put like a question in the chat box, and I'll try to pick them up. And for Emanuele, if you see them, then of course feel free to answer them as well. Okay, any questions?
Emanuele, so yes. What is, according to your model, the optimal policy regarding patent breadth?
Well, the optimal policy in this model is not to have a patent system. Then you may, the aim of those exercises is not really to find the optimal policy, even because like patent breadth is a parameter that we don't really observe, so we cannot really give a prescription in terms of that parameter. So if you have to look at the experiment, what the model suggests is that just don't use a patent system, use alternative tools, because the costs are so high and the implication on innovation are so dramatic that it's better to use alternative tools. We can complicate a little bit the model and eventually find maybe some nonlinearities, like that a little bit of protection is useful if you have like fixed cost of R&D or other kind of complication. But I think that the main story is still there. So the patent system is highly dysfunctional for the pharmaceutical industry, also for the pharmaceutical industry.
Okay, any other question by anyone? If not, then I'll ask a question. So just to check my understanding, so you start with kind of 100 identical firms, and then endogenously they evolve into this kind of oligopolistic structure that you've described, which I thought was a really great feature of the model. So the question I had was like, what you, and I'm not an expert in this industry, but so in my understanding, what happens quite a lot is that small startups get like bought up by kind of big companies. So, you know, so there's a small startup, they have like a great idea, and they develop a prototype, and then at some point, you know, a big kind of established oligopolist comes in and buys it outright. Is that something that you have in your model? If not, do you think that would affect kind of what you find, or is it kind of a completely different kind of story? Thanks.
Well, this is something that is not explicit in the model, but I think can be accounted. I mean, the dynamics of small firms and the fact that they eventually, we don't have merger and acquisition in our model. Okay, so you have that at the end, larger firms survives and you get these oligopolistic patterns, but you can see also these eventually as the process of buying smaller firms. In a future version, this might be clearly an extension, especially when we have when we explicitly model the government and the universities, that you can allow for spin-offs from the university that are so common in these industries, and the emergence of new startups that eventually are bought by giants later. I think that is something that is not explicitly embedded in the model, but is there, and I think that it's something that we can further explore later.
Great, thank you. Yeah, does anyone else want to come in with a question? Okay, I see not maybe not many kind of colleagues in the pharmaceutical or interested in the pharmaceutical sector specifically. Yeah, so let me ask one maybe final question in this case, which is kind of so let me combine two different types of questions. So I was a little bit puzzled by the fact that, like, when you increase the patent breadth, that the quality goes down. So maybe I just don't understand fully like the definition of the variables, but so is that because kind of if you increase it, then inherently some kind of some products, you know, essentially if you increase it, there's like less money to be made in kind of individual products because, you know, they just deteriorate? Or is it because like the companies are less efficient in doing that? Because like when you increase the intensity, right, you increase the money that they spend, right, and then the quality still went down. So essentially, I was just wondering whether like how that kind of relates to each other. And so to tag on, like my final question that I had was like, so if you look with your model at kind of the COVID kind of situation and the development of drugs in, like, you know, COVID against coronavirus, is there something you can learn for that particular kind of area with your model? So does it apply, or would you need to tweak it to make it applicable to kind of the COVID vaccines?
Okay, thank you. So it's a very complicated question. Let me start with the simplest part, that is why we find a negative effect on quality. That is mostly because overall the fact that the patent system decreases technological opportunities, because it blocks new product and doesn't allow firms to survive, and creates a very concentrated industry. This hampers innovation, and by hampering innovation, it hampers also quality enhancement in specific submarkets. So as a result of lower technological opportunities, there is also this side effect on product quality. Related to the COVID situation, well, what I would say is that I don't think that I don't really think that the patent system was crucial in developing COVID vaccines. There, a larger role was played by public funding, subsidies. Then of course the patent system may affect clearly production and distribution, and in this respect, what the model tells us is that potentially not having a patent system, having alternative tools, like studying different solutions where maybe solutions in which the public also takes some cost of clinical trials. Those may be better alternatives to favor the production and distribution of drugs. So, and also, therefore, also for the COVID vaccine. So, what we think is that policy proposal that goes in the direction of at least waiving patent rights temporarily are very much in line with the results of this model.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then there's now a last chance to ask any further questions. Okay, doesn't look like it. Well, then, yeah, thank you very much, Emanuele. I thought that was really great, really interesting, and I definitely learned a lot compared to kind of my usual kind of more kind of banking oriented focus. Yeah, thank you, and all the best for your future research, of course. So just some housekeeping announcements. So this is kind of the final ABM4Policy seminar of the summer. So we'll have like a summer break now, and we'll commence after the break in the fall, and we'll send out an announcement, of course, in the meantime. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Have a good rest of the day, and I hope to see you sometime soon.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.